David, I'm so excited to get to share the stage with you today. Is there anything else that you would like our audience members to know about you before we dive into some of our questions?
Sure. Well, I've had a pretty varied career. I've started out as an architect, obviously, by training, and I've worked on projects all over the world. I love what I do, and I'm kind of an evangelist for what I do. I've got pictures and stuff if that's interesting at some point if we wanted to see any of that stuff. But I've worked on everything from working on movies like Monsters Inc. with Pixar, and you know, it's just interesting that the doors that if you let them open, you can really get to do some really cool things, even if it's not what you were trained to do.
Absolutely. It's very funny that you say Monsters Inc. because I just got back from Disney last week and this had to come back with me. But yeah, all right. So, okay, let's dive in. What really inspired you to transition from traditional architecture, like most people think of brick and mortar, to working at the forefront of technology when it comes to construction and design?
Well, really, what happened is I was working as an architect. I loved what I was doing. I even loved the firm I was at. And then things like layoffs happened. So my first big layoff was in 2006, and then my second big one was in 2008. But everything I've done in my career, it's kind of happened as the opportunities come. So when I left architecture my last time after being laid off, I started working for consulting firms. And that opened me up to a lot of different industries. It opened me up to a lot of different project types. And it also allowed me to shine as far as like what I do best, which is 3D modeling, working with reality capture and things. So I went from being a consultant to being absorbed by a company, and that kind of opened me up to a number of other opportunities.
That's good. All right. Now, I think a lot of us are familiar with some of the major layoff portions that have happened. I graduated in 2008, so that was definitely the landscape I entered as well. And it kind of just points to the resilience that is needed for a lot of us to exist in in corporate America here. Um, while you are managing some very high profile projects right now, like the Chase Center Arena. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in tasks like this, and how have you overcome them?
Well, there's always a lot to do in a lot of those projects and a lot of those companies. Um, One of the things that I've always made sure that I did was understand whatever the newest technology is, and then also understanding what is the ask. So, you know, you can't just assume because of the type of job that you're doing that you're supposed to do a particular thing. You need to know what the people that you report to, what's important to them, and what do they need to report up to somebody above them to. So, as long as you're making whatever their KPIs are met better, then you have a better chance of succeeding and then also getting the next opportunity and getting more responsibility. Because a lot of what it is I've always wanted to have the responsibility, I've always wanted to have the title. So making sure that I am living up to whatever that next title is also part of what I've done in my career to kind of advance my career.
I mean, it almost sounds like you treat each current role as your not necessarily resume, but kind of as an application for the next role. Do you think that it requires that degree of like forward, kind of like forward looking?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the other thing is relationships. So making sure that you build relationships both on the products you're on, people that you're working with. So obviously when I was working on the Chase Center, I got to, work with some of the players and some of the coaches and even the ownership people. So like I've developed those relationships so that I get to go and golf with some of them sometimes, or I go get to spend time with them, or I'm invited to things that I wouldn't necessarily be invited to if I didn't develop those relationships and then cultivate them. So I do that
Mm.
everywhere I can, whether it's online, whether it's in person, even if I'm just out and about and I see somebody that I think I know, I'm not afraid to go up and say, I think I've worked with you. And, I'll just, sometimes it embarrasses my kids or my wife, but, I don't mind that. I like to be able to say, hey, this is a relationship that I want to cultivate and then therefore have some opportunities that might come from that later.
Absolutely. As the daughter of a salesman, I would not be embarrassed because that was kind of every day. So absolutely, I very much appreciate and very much secondhand corroborate that the less afraid you are to just go and say hi to people, the easier it is to create those relationships. It doesn't have to be something that you're like hugely in your head or kind of scheming to make happen. Have there been any projects that you've been able to work on with Autodesk that you've been particularly proud of?
Well, at Autodesk, I work with our largest customers in the world. So sometimes I'm working with Disney. So when I'm working with Disney, I could be working with them on a movie with some animation or 3D printing stuff. Just like so, the working on Monsters Inc. I was working in 3D printing. But it could be working on a amusement park the next day, and then I'm working on some really amazing projects out in Saudi Arabia called NEOM, which are multi-trillion-dollar projects, and every single major company that we work with is working on them. So I've had to go out to Dubai and Saudi Arabia to work on those projects and to help them just develop workflows. So my job right now is just a really creative job where I get to work with developers on working on creating custom software or creating workflows to try to figure out how to make a multi-trillion-dollar, multi-million square foot space actually be produced in the computers because a lot of times the limitations of our computers or the limitation of our software means that we have to create workarounds to make things work so that you see whatever you're seeing on TV. Even if it's like the Super Bowl has the show created in software like ours, which is whether it's AutoCAD or Revit or some of our animation software. So they plan out every single piece of the show by using software like our software to get it done. So I think it's really cool that no matter what it is, I can create a bespoke solution to accomplish something.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right. Now, 3D printing is for me, for people of my demographic and age range, 3D printing was kind of the like, oh my God, what do you mean we're going to be able to 3D print things? But obviously, emerging technologies, includes things like robotics, reality capture. How have these technologies transformed the way you get to approach architecture and construction?
Well, and again, so Autodesk makes over 140 different products. So our products work with everything that you can think of from 3D printers to robots to just communicating with other companies too. So what you're probably seeing in the background is you're seeing stuff on my shelves and stuff. A lot of those are 3D prints. When it comes to robotics, we're working on technology to allow for robots to build buildings, to paint walls, to install drywall. I mean, all kinds of things. So it's really cool to be able to, help some of these innovative companies solve a problem to make their equipment do whatever it needs to do using our software.
I mean, it's amazing. You're like, it sounds pretty trite, but you are building the things that will build the future. That's pretty really cool, cutting edge stuff to get to look at.
Yeah. So
Is
another
this and
project
oh, go
that
ahead, please.
Yeah, another really cool project that I worked on recently was a couple years ago was I'm sure you all saw that there was a lander that landed on the moon that was sent up by NASA. So my part of the project is I helped to build a facility that created that device. So it's like we're working on stuff. We work on stuff with SpaceX, with Firefly, with all the Blue Origin. So it doesn't matter what the industry is, we're touching it, and it's kind of interesting to see that stuff happen.
Absolutely. All right, so let's bring it back to Autodesk. How does Autodesk help you to continue to embrace and explore these new technologies? This is something that learning as we go is something a lot of us are well aware is going to be something for, the rest of our careers. But how does Autodesk kind of help to keep you at that forefront?
Well, they give us learning resources. So we have learning resources internally. Also, it's on my own initiative to go and find out things and do things myself. So like as we get new software or we're in the process of possibly acquiring some new company, I'll be someone that'll be working in that new software so that if an acquisition happens, we have the ability to incorporate and integrate that into not only our biggest customers, but also some of our workflows that we have internally. So I'm always looking to whether it's improve the way that I use the software or just learn new software. So if I see something come up, I'll be like, oh yeah, that looks like right now, a lot of it's about data management. So I'm looking into a lot of the databases we're using, the way that we can create classification systems, which sounds kind of boring, but when you look at how it connects everything in the world, it's like there's classification systems for everything. There's a system called OmniClass that you can pretty much classify anything that you see in the world into a classification system. So being able to use that and mine that for data is some of what I'm doing now to help my customers achieve what they want.
Absolutely. I mean, these are the areas of technology that I think are really fascinating because, yeah, it's really easy to say, like, oh, I'm managing data. That doesn't sound as important or doesn't sound as interesting, but it's not really because when we're talking about data, we're talking about the language that these computers, these software, the systems use to talk to each other. So the data is just as important as the visuals, if not more so.
All right.
But I love this. Um, could you give us an example of some of the room to grow and expand professionally that Autodesk offers for you?
Well, Autodesk is a great company. They really care about their employees. They provide for us ways to, not only make sure that you are connected while you're at work, but be able to disconnect when you're not at work. So giving us things like a 6 week sabbatical every 4 years where you're still paid and you just kind of go do whatever you want to do. Like they give us money for wellness where we can buy like golf clubs or bikes or whatever we want, and they reimburse us for that. And then they just make sure that you have connections to your other employees, whether we're doing things like the Autodesk University or various little get-togethers that we do. Sometimes we'll go somewhere around the world to do that. We even have at Autodesk a thing called the Autodesk World Cup, which is a soccer tournament. We go somewhere in the world to play this soccer tournament every year. Last year it was in Warsaw, Poland. The year before that it was in Germany. The year before that it was in Barcelona. This year we're going to Frankfurt, Germany, and then the next year it'll be in Atlanta. So it's like they bring thousands of us together to play a soccer tournament against each other. And this is against the CEO and the CTO. They're all playing with us. So it's really exciting to like connect with all different levels and not really have you don't feel like you're in a hierarchy so much that you can't like communicate with people that are you can use that networking opportunity to really get really good insights as to what would make your career go wherever you want it to go.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that it's centered around an activity like soccer, like, like like personally, I think sports is the great equalizer for a lot of us. And so I very, very, very much appreciate that it's a situation and a situation that's meant to, like you said, break down that hierarchy to get y'all to relate to each other, especially in different ways than you do so in the working world, to kind of open up those relationships and explore that. I think that's great. All right. One of my questions I was very much looking forward to asking you, what is the coolest or most futuristic technology? Something that you have worked with and you felt like you were living in a sci-fi movie.
Well, so my particular group deals with artificial intelligence. So we deal with machine learning, AI. I'm sure you guys have seen all the stuff about DeepSeek and Chat GPT and stuff. So Autodesk also has its own AI engine. And so we're building a lot of what's next as far as like I tell a computer that I want to do a building in this part of the world, and it shows me a whole bunch of options and says, okay, you can start from. So it's like building a foundational model to then go from so that you can at least have something to start from. Because a lot of what gets us stuck when we're doing something creative is just putting that initial pen to pad, right? It's like, how do
The
I
blank
start?
page.
Like sit there thinking about it forever. But if you can just talk to some computer and it kind of gives you some ideas, and obviously it's not creating from nothing. It has to look at everything in the world to create something. And that's the one limitation of artificial intelligence is that it can only create based on examples of things that exist. So I think that's the cool next frontier. It's not necessarily going to remove jobs, but it makes you use your job differently to get to the best possible answer. Because all we're trying to do with our company is just allow you to create the best possible answer for whatever the question that you're trying to ask.
Absolutely. I mean, like any other technology, every technology builds on the one that came before it. And so if you are seeing somebody be very successful or seeing a company be successful, you're looking at somebody who's standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think it is really important that when we talk about, artificial intelligence, especially as it exists now, we reference the fact that it does have to learn from what it sees. But you're absolutely right. It takes away that blank page paralysis, that where do I start kind of thing. My husband uses it for writing. He's somebody that will tell you he's not good at writing. Put him in front of ChatGPT for his first draft. His second draft is absolutely amazing because you are overcoming that initial stumbling block of wait, I don't know what to do first. So I think this is amazing and really can't wait to see where this technology can lead us.
Yeah, and the next step
Um,
is also making sure that it also responds to things like cultural issues. Like there's all kinds of cultural, racial, and political issues that it doesn't necessarily respond well to yet. And so we're trying to make sure that we also train it to be able to be respectful and responsive to those types of issues.
if you could dream big and kind of predict something that's going to be part of AI, if let's just say that like you get to be Nostradamus here, what would you ideally like to see become a part of the AI model?
I definitely think I'd like to see its ability um, to create something that is sustainable or also that it can support like life as we need it. So it's about making sure that it doesn't just only do what it thinks is a computer answer and understands how it affects humans. So I think that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at is like, okay, it can design a space, but can it design a space that's actually usable and that you want to be in? So that, of course, I'm
Yeah,
an architect, so I'm thinking of space, but you could think of that as a for toys, for cars. Like you're getting into cars that are now electric, that are made with batteries and things. How does it affect you to be going, 50 miles faster an hour than you used to go, from the time you hit the pedal. You have to be aware of how that affects people around you. So I mean, it seems kind of trite, but there's a lot of things that a
no, it's
computer
not trite at all.
can affect you if if you don't make it look at all of the potential ramifications.
No, absolutely. You want something that's a bit more integrated and smart about those integrations. And you're absolutely right. I mean, like these are it might sound trite, but it's not. If you're giving something to a person and say, here, design this, they're not actually going to be filtering out all of these other influences that drive them. So yeah, I mean that makes a ton of sense that you want those decisions to be made with an integrated consciousness. I like that. We did get one question from the chat. I don't hope you don't mind me asking this. This person said, as an architect looking to pivot into tech, what's the best way to convince hiring managers that our skills are transferable?
Well, I think one of the things you can always do is to apply yourself to learning, whether it's like a programming language like a Python, or you learn how to do visual programming languages. There's all kinds of them out there. I would just apply yourself to actually learn at any level. You don't have to get to become an expert to do it, but I mean, you'll see at Autodesk, there's a lot of people that started out as architects that are now program managers, product managers, they're product owners, they're Scrum masters. They design the actual software that you use on a day-to-day basis. So I mean, architects seem to be, I think probably there's probably more people that started as architects that are not architects anymore because they end up in the industry doing all kinds of jobs than there are people that actually draw a plan and draw some elevations. Like there's so many of us that end up in a lot of other fields just because it's just a very flexible thing and it teaches really good thinking skills as far as solving problems and how space relates to function.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So if as we're speaking, we have all kinds of people that come to these events, but if you are trying to give advice to professionals, especially people looking to pivot or embrace those new technologies, how do you recommend people stay relevant in such a rapidly evolving industry?
Well, to me, it's about trying to make sure that you have uh, abilities or capabilities that is different from everyone else. I mean, you don't have to say I don't have to do everything different, but I like to make sure that I know something that makes me valuable to my whoever's employing me, right? So it's not, yeah, I could go and draw a stair, and a stair is something that every architect needs to know how to do, how the rise and run works with a stair. But being able to think innovatively about how that stair is actually being used or how it's feeding a space. I mean, there are things that you can use in your own abilities or your own creativity to show yourself as valuable to your employers.
Absolutely. And usually I know the answer to these things before I ask them, but would you consider yourself to be a curious person?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always trying to figure out what's the next step for me too. So it's not just about curiosity and what I'm doing, it's curiosity and what I could be doing. So I don't know if you guys can see in my little video right now, but to my right now is a DJ deck. So I'm like learning how to be I'm learning again how to be a DJ, which I used to do way back in the day. I'm always trying something new. I'm always reading a book. I'm always interested in something new that will help me just have something else to do later. Because if I get bored, that's like death to me.
Yes, I feel that on a deep emotional level. All right, so we've only got about 5 minutes left. So if y'all have other questions that you'd like me to ask David, please feel free to send those in. Um, one thing that I was really looking forward to asking you, you have a 25-year career behind you and obviously many more years ahead. What is one lesson or principle that you feel has really guided you through those periods of change and innovation that you've experienced in the last 25 years?
Well, the biggest thing is, like I was saying before, as far as opening doors or letting those open doors, walking through them. So, like when I went and joined WeWork, a lot of you may not know what WeWork is, but it was a company that does like subletting of space. It's like if you wanted an office, but you didn't want to go pay for a whole building to have that office, you could just rent a single office. When I joined WeWork, it was I didn't know anything about them for one thing, and then when I went to join them, I didn't know what my job was going to be. So I got a job there, and if you've ever seen, there's movies and documentaries about it. It's a company that went through a lot of change, and it was the biggest IPO failure in the history of the stock market. But it was a great place to work, and it was great to see. Like, I worked with some amazing people. I got to work on projects that all around the world. They took me all around the world. Like, if I didn't let myself leave the Golden State Warriors to go work for this unknown company that was worth billions of dollars at one point, I wouldn't have had all those experiences that led me to my point of actually coming to Autodesk. And it also made me learn a big lesson about going to a startup and where the values and going to a very established, well-known company like Autodesk, where, you're not worried about your stock falling apart or you're not worried about your job. Like we don't have as many layoffs, but at WeWork on one day, they laid off 14,000 people. And that was a scary moment for me. So
Yeah, absolutely. I've had similar feelings after leaving corporate America to then work within startups. And you're right, it's a learning curve, but it's also something that, like you said, if I had not joined various companies over the years, I wouldn't have the experience that I had. So I probably wouldn't bring the same, your kind of same purview to the table. So I find that very interesting. All right, I have two questions. These are a bit off the cuff. Apologies. They're my favorite ones to ask. If you could change anything about your career thus far, what would you change?
I mean, I feel like there are times where I didn't apply myself at different times in my career, whether it was like when I could have become registered as an architect way back in the day. Like I'm still sitting here on the ability to go test for my final architecture registration. And that's something that I wish I had done a long time ago. Not that I really need it for my job now, but I'd like to have that done. And then there's other times where you could have taken another door and gone down another road. And like, I feel like you should not never be scared of the unknown. I mean, even if you can be nervous about, some of not knowing how it's going to go, I don't think you should be scared of it because a lot of times in the fear comes the growth and you not only your growth but also just the amazing experiences. I've gotten to meet some of the most amazing people in the world because I was willing to just, go into a place that I wasn't expecting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, my last question, that is again always my favorite to ask. If people only remember one thing from this session that we've had today, what do you want that one thing they take with them to be?
Always be learning and always be willing to fail. I think if you're not willing to fail, then it's hard to really make big advancements in your life. So like I've failed many times in my life. I've failed many times in my current job. And I'm always trying to make sure that I do better and that I learn from it and that I be the best person I can be, both to my family, to my company, to everyone that I meet.
I love that advice. I absolutely love it. You know, as humans, our brains are we are wired. We learn from failure. We don't learn from success, right? And so if you are, like I said previously, if you are looking at somebody who's very successful in their career, you are looking at someone who knows how to fail. You're looking at someone who has failed and has learned from that. So I love all of this advice. David, thank you so much for spending time with us today, for sharing your expertise. It's incredibly valuable, and we're very, very grateful.
Yeah.
If people want to keep up with you and learn what you've got going on, where can they follow you? What should they know?
You can definitely follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to. Respond to anybody that sends me a message pretty much. So if you send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll definitely respond to you. And I'm also, yeah, I'm definitely on LinkedIn and I'm trying to think of where else. I think that's probably the best place for me.
Sounds good. Well, you can definitely watch for a reach out from me. I always tend to follow up with my interviewees. But David, thank you so much. This has been wonderful and really, really good information to hear, not only about your career, but about what Autodesk has done to help support that and to keep you learning so that you can keep moving forward and developing the spaces that we'll all inhabit someday.
Yeah. Good luck to everyone.